The Galactic Council had just made a historic miscalculation. They thought the chair they were melting down belonged to a weak, isolated species. They were about to find out that it was an embassy. And they'd just declared war on a silent, hidden empire. The air in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was thick with thousands of years of tradition and the smug satisfaction of 1,000 species. Light from a captured nebula swirled across the impossibly high ceiling, lighting up the tiered rings where delegates from every known corner of space sat in judgment. And right in the middle of it all, on the floor of the assembly, was a single, unassuming chair, made of polished oak. It was a relic from a distant world called Earth. For 200 years, it had sat there, a symbol of humanity's observer status, a quiet, solitary species, granted a token presence out of what they all saw as galactic pity. Today, that pity was running out. High Speaker, a being that looked like a column of shimmering, barely contained energy, floated above his podium. His voice, a series of harmonic chimes, instantly translated into 1,000 languages, resonated through the chamber. For 2 centuries, he chimed, his tones dripping with condescension, we have indulged the presence of the Terrans. We offered them a window to the galaxy, a chance to learn from their betters. We've shown them patience. We've shown them grace. He paused, letting that sink in. Around the chamber, delegates nodded. The Cathar, hulking insectoids from a high-gravity world, clacked their mandibles in approval. The Xylos, gelatinous philosophers who spoke through shifting colors, pulsed a serene, unified blue of agreement. And how have they repaid this generosity? Speaker Verl continued. With silence, with isolation. They haven't contributed to our collective defense. They haven't shared in our technological triumphs. Their chair has remained a symbol of not just their absence, but their failure. A failure to evolve, a failure to integrate, a failure to matter. On the floor, beside the simple wooden chair, stood a single human, Ambassador Aurelia Vance, dressed in a simple, dark blue uniform. She stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. For years, she'd put up with the thinly veiled insults and the patronizing questions from beings who had ruled star systems before her species had even discovered fire. She'd listened to them debate humanity's potential, as if they were discussing a disappointing pet. The time for this indulgence is over, Speaker Verl declared, his chimes rising. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We can no longer afford to carry dead weight. Therefore, by the power vested in me, I call for a vote. All in favor of revoking humanity's observer status and removing their seat from this chamber, signify now. A wave of light, sound, and telepathic assent washed through the chamber. It was nearly unanimous, a sea of agreement from 1,000 worlds, all aligned in their contempt for the quiet little species from Sol. Aurelia Vance didn't react. She just watched as the tally confirmed the inevitable. The council understood that representation was power, and they'd just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity had none. The motion carries, Speaker Verl chimed. Let the record show that on this day, the Galactic Council has corrected its roster. But dismissal wasn't enough. Humiliation had to follow. Speaker Verl gestured with a tendril of pure light. And to finalize this overdue procedure, he announced, let us remove this monument to their apathy. Two brave drones hummed as they floated down and locked onto the oak chair, lifting it into the air. A third, larger machine followed. A mobile plasma reclamation unit, the kind used for scrapping derelict starships. Its nozzle glowed with white-hot energy. The delegates watched, fascinated. This was more than procedure. This was a statement. This was hubris made manifest. They weren't just removing a chair. They were erasing a memory. The plasma beam lanced out, striking the ancient wood. The chair, which had sat in silent dignity for 200 years, vaporized instantly. The beam intensified, striking the very floor where it had rested, melting the sigil of humanity, a simple circle representing Earth that was embedded in the adamantium floor. The metal glowed, bubbled, and then cooled into a hideous, scarred puddle. The ultimate symbolic dismissal. It was as if humanity had never been there at all. A satisfied murmur rippled through the assembly. Through it all, Ambassador Aurelia Vance remained stoic. She watched the metal cool, her expression unchanging. But for those with the senses to notice, a flicker registered in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It looked, impossibly, like pity. And on her lips, the barest hint of a smile. She let the silence hang for a long moment. Then, she turned to the High Speaker. Her voice, unamplified, was quiet, yet carried across the chamber with chilling clarity. "Thank you, Mr. Speaker," she said. The assembly stirred. They'd expected protests, begging, maybe even a flash of that primitive emotion they called rage. They had not expected gratitude. Aurelia continued, her gaze sweeping across the thousands of delegates who had just cast her people into oblivion. "For 200 years, humanity has occupied this chair. You believed it was a symbol of our isolation, a sign of our weakness. You believed it was our only connection to a galaxy we were too timid to join." She took a step toward the molten ruin where her seat once stood. "You were wrong," she said, her voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "That chair was not an embassy. It was a quarantine. The empty chair was never for our protection. It was for yours." A few confused, then derisive, chuckles echoed through the chamber. The Cathar clacked their mandibles in amusement. Speaker Voral's light column shimmered with what could only be a scoff. The human was delusional. Aurelia Vance gave a slight, formal bow. "The quarantine is now lifted. Have a pleasant day, members of the council." Without another word, she turned and walked toward the grand exit. The heavy doors hissed open and then boomed shut behind her, the sound echoing with the finality of a tomb ceiling. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then, the bizarre little drama with the humans was forgotten as the council moved on to agricultural subsidies and trade disputes. In the weeks that followed, there was only silence from the Sol system. No angry diplomatic cables, no desperate pleas for reinstatement. The galaxy moved on, blissfully unaware. A few minor glitches started popping up in galactic infrastructure, a jump gate flickering offline, a communications array going down for a few minutes. It was the kind of background noise you never notice until it's gone. The first alarm was a low hum, barely noticeable over the din of 1,000 species arguing. Then a second joined it, higher pitched, more urgent, and a third. Within seconds, the grand chamber was bathed in the flashing crimson light of a full-scale emergency alert. Delegates rose in panic. The main holodisplay switched to a tactical map of the star system. It was swarming with unknown contacts. "Report." Speaker Voral's harmonic chimes were sharp with panic. A Xylo's military coordinator named Corveth was desperately trying to make sense of the data. His gelatinous body flashed frantic colors. Unidentified vessels. His translated voice trembled. Thousands of them. They appeared from nowhere. No jump gate signature. No hyperspace wake. They just arrived. The ships were sleek, menacing, and their energy signatures were impossibly advanced. They surrounded the Citadel station, a silent, menacing fleet. But they weren't powering weapons. They were just waiting. Then, every screen in the chamber, every personal datapad, went black. A moment later, they flickered back to life, all showing a single image, the molten, slagged-over sigil of humanity on the chamber floor. A voice broadcast across all channels. A voice the delegates recognized with a jolt of horror. It was Aurelia Vance. "This is Ambassador Vance of the Terran Empire, broadcasting to the former seat of the human embassy," she began, her tone cold and formal. She was pointedly not addressing the council. She was addressing the empty space. "Your recent action has been interpreted as a formal revocation of the quarantine treaty. We are, therefore, initiating the protocols for first contact." Speaker Voral stammered. "First contact? What is the meaning of this? You are a known species." Aurelia's face finally appeared on the screens. She was on the bridge of a warship, surrounded by a calm, disciplined crew. She offered a cold smile. "You knew of a single, isolated observer world," she corrected. "You knew what we allowed you to know. You are about to be introduced to the Terran Empire." Her face was replaced by simple text. Galactic infrastructure. A memorandum, then 3 points appeared. Point 1, Aurelia's voiceover explained. "For the past 200 years, human shell corporations and proxy species have been awarded approximately 52% of all galactic infrastructure contracts. We built half your galaxy while you weren't paying attention. We are the architects, the engineers." On his console, Korf watched in horror as system after system across the galaxy began to flag itself with a new insignia, a Terran Empire emblem. Point 2, she continued. "All jump gates in council space require cascading authorization codes to function. These codes originate from Earth. We control the arteries of the galaxy. As of this moment, your interstellar travel network is locked down." The tactical map lit up as every jump gate in known space went dead. The galaxy was paralyzed. And finally, Aurelia said, Point 3. "For 2 centuries, you believed we were isolated. In reality, we've been migrating, integrating, and waiting. Check your sensors. Korf ran a biosignature scan of the Citadel station itself. The results made his gelatinous form nearly collapse. "They're here," he gasped. "They're already here." Across the galaxy, a signal went out. Millions of people who had been living as unassuming civilians dropped their facades. On the tactical display, tens of thousands of blue markers appeared, representing human vessels hiding in plain sight. Aurelia's voice delivered the final, crushing blow. "There are not 10 billion humans in the Sol system. There are 9 million Terrans embedded across every facet of your civilization. We are your mechanics, your cargo pilots, your janitors. We are the people you never bothered to look at twice. The empty chair wasn't to keep us safe from you. It was to keep you safe from us. It was a promise that our silent, hidden empire would remain silent." She paused. "You melted down our promise." The crimson emergency lights flashed across the silent faces of 1,000 horrified alien delegates. The scale of it all was just too massive to process. This wasn't a military invasion. It was a hostile takeover from within. They hadn't just insulted a minor species. They had fired the janitor who held the master keys to the entire building. They had declared war on the very foundation of their society. High Speaker Voral's form had shrunk. His light a dim, sickly yellow. He floated aimlessly, his authority vaporized as thoroughly as the oak chair had been. His gaze drifted down to the ugly, scarred puddle of metal that had, moments ago, been a source of such pride. He saw it for what it was now, the gravestone of their own arrogance. Military Coordinator Korf was still at his station, watching internal sensors. Thousands of life signs, previously catalogued as low-level employees, were reclassifying themselves human. 9 million of them. An invisible army that had lived among them for generations. He ran a trace on the station's core. Systems, life support, gravity, communications. All of them flashed the same message. Terran Empire engineering. Access denied. They were prisoners in their own citadel. For centuries, they had seen humanity as quiet and uninteresting. They never considered that humanity was a network, a living system that had wrapped itself around the core of their civilization, making itself essential, all while remaining unseen. The psychological reckoning was absolute. The screens in the chamber flickered again. This time, it was a simple, text-based emblem. The double-headed eagle of the Terran Empire. Beneath it, a single line of text appeared. The Galactic Council is no longer recognized. New terms of galactic governance will be forthcoming. Do not attempt to resist. Do not attempt to flee. We are already everywhere. The message vanished, replaced by the live feed of the chamber itself. 1,000 stunned delegates, staring back at their own terrified reflections. The galaxy no longer had a council. It had a new, undisputed master. The galaxy had just poked the largest predator it had never known existed. And after 2 centuries of patient, silent waiting, it was hungry. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from the far reaches of space. And let me know in the comments, what do you think the Terran Empire's first order will be?